So do a lot of people come to you for advice and you're not really sure if or how you should give it, or maybe you give your advice all the time and it's not working out too well for you. Well, in today's video, I'm going to share with you the 3 rules to giving advice. And the first rule is to determine if we're even going to give the advice. And it's been my life experience, there's only 2 times we should ever give somebody else advice. 1 is if they ask for it, or 2, if they pay us for it. Now you know why I'm in this position, is I tended to give a lot of advice when people weren't asking. So I was like, well, how can I turn this around? I'll get paid for it. But in all seriousness, I don't even give my clients advice, and I'm going to show you how I don't do that here in a minute. But remember I said what that really leaves us with is the only time to give someone advice, and this means our kids too, you know, once they get to that teenager and especially into adulthood. It's been my life experience, we should never give our children advice, unsolicited advice. Only when they ask us for our advice. But I have found we have to reconcile a few things before we decide to give that advice. Think about the last time somebody came to you and you shared with them what you thought they should do. And it was probably very kind and very loving and very appropriate. And what happened? They didn't do it. They got angry at you. They blamed you. They said you were out to get them. They said you weren't on their side. You weren't supporting them. You didn't understand them. Like in most cases, when somebody is telling us about a struggle they're going through and they ask us for our input and we give it, they don't really like it, right? So that's the first step. Determine if you're going to give the advice. And how do you do that? Well, here are 4 questions I ask myself. 1, am I going to be perfectly okay if they choose not to follow my advice? In other words, can I give this and be completely detached from the outcome and never bring it up of how, oh my God, I keep telling you what to do and you never do it, or, you know, any of that. If I can satisfy that, I give them the advice. Question number 2, am I okay if they become angry at me at whatever suggestion I give them? Because I have to expect it, because that's unfortunately many times people are unaware that when they're asking for advice, what they're really subconsciously asking for is, can you support my victim position? Can you help me find a way to stay irresponsible and not fix this and condone my poor behavior? That's, or my, maybe not poor behavior, but poor choices. Like many times when somebody's struggling with something, they already know the answer, but they're not ready to make the choice. And so they're asking us, can you come up with an idea so I can stay here without having to make this choice? And when we show them, oh no, you're going to have to do this, they will tend to get angry with us. So as long as I'm okay with them getting angry, I give the advice. Question number 3 is, am I okay if they blame me? Think about it, especially relationship type stuff. If we do give our advice and they do it and they lose the relationship or they lose their career, if they feel a sense of loss, even if the loss was healthy for them, they may still be stuck in that position of, not wanting to be responsible, and they'll use that to blame us. So we need to consider that. Is my friend or partner, we're all perfectly imperfect and human. And so they may, in their imperfection, get upset with me and try and blame me. Am I okay with that? Will I be able to separate out and not take it personal and just go, okay, they're just having a hard time adjusting to this new reality and they want to blame me, and that's okay. If I can do that, then I give the advice. And finally, number 4, will I resent them in any way if I give them this advice? So in other words, any of those first 3, if they don't do it, if they become angry at me or they blame me, if I'm going to resent them for any of that, then I don't give the advice. All right, so that's rule number 1. Determine if you're going to give the advice. And that's why in general I say I don't ever give anyone advice. I have learned in my life very, very rarely am I Am I going to be okay if they don't do it? Like, I get tied to the outcome. We're all codependent, and we all want the best for somebody. We all get frustrated when they don't do what we think is in their best interest. And so most often I recognize, yeah, I don't have the reserves. I know at some point I may get frustrated. So a lot of times I can't get past step number one, that I'm going to be frustrated that they don't do it. I don't like, even though if someone's angry at me, they did it to themselves, I don't want to put myself in that position. I protect myself. And so that's another reason I won't give advice. I also don't like to have to always have my boundaries up to protect someone from blaming me. So that would be another reason. And then when I give advice and give, that's giving myself away, I will end up resenting myself for walking into a trap, which I knew, because I know almost always when someone asks for advice, they don't really want the advice. Again, they want us to support how they're being, this sounds very unkind, but it's what's happening. They want us to support how they're being irresponsible in their life. They're stuck in denial and they're not ready to face the situation. They really want us to condone that behavior. Well, that's not loving. I don't condone it. And so it almost guarantees those negative reactions back at me. Well, I'm not going to set myself up for that. Unless I'm dealing with someone who's done a lot of recovery work, I won't give advice. Okay? Now, what's rule number 2? If you decide you can satisfy those 4 questions, the second rule is never, ever, ever tell them what to do. Instead, when you share your advice, don't say, well, you should do this, or I think you. Instead, how I always frame it is, well, if it were me and I were in that situation, here's what I would consider doing. Or when I was in that similar situation, here's what I chose to do, A, B, C, and D. Don't know if that'll work for you, but those are my suggestions and those are the things that worked for me. So do you see what I'm doing is I'm really protecting myself from those first 3 questions of blame and getting caught up in whether they do it and whether they get angry, because I'm not saying you. The second any of us hear the word you, because we don't have emotional mastery, because most of us are codependent, we pull back from our childhood and go, oh, mom and dad are saying I'm a bad kid. We're not present. When we hear someone say you, we literally drop back to childhood, and that's why these reactions happen. And so since I'm aware of that, I change the words I use. I make the problem about me. I make the solution about me. You hear me talk about it in a lot of my videos. It's been my life experience. So even as I'm teaching this stuff in these videos, while you're tuning in because you want, in a sense, my advice, I'm already creating a buffer and going, it's been my life experience. So you can disagree, that's fine. Your life experience is different. I'm just sharing mine with you. So do you see, even in a lot of these videos, there are times I do say you should do this, and there are applicable reasons why I do that, okay? But most often, I will say in my experience. And that's how we protect ourselves and we protect the other person. It's going to mitigate. It's also interdependence, not codependence, to share our experience, strength, and hope instead of telling somebody what to do. And so that's all I'm ever doing. And that's something I use nonstop with my clients. And my clients pay me money. Kenny, what should I do with A, B, C, and D? My job, my boss is doing this. My child is doing this. My partner is doing this. How should I do it? And they're paying me money for it. And I will say to them, well, actually, I was in a situation like this back here. I was in that situation. I know for me, in my life experience, in the studying I've done, this is that's primarily how I respond to every single client in these situations, okay? Rule number 3, if you decide to give advice, turn everything into a question, because again, none of us like to be told what to do. And so when we frame things as a question, it allows them to walk into the answer. Then they can take ownership of the suggestion, of the advice. Now it comes from within them. So this will look a little awkward. I'm going to look down and read some of these questions because I can't remember them all off the top of my head. But one of the ways I do that with clients or with friends and family members is I'll say, that's an interesting position you're in. So what do you think your options are? Do you see, I get them thinking, like I may know this is what they need to do. And so I'll ask them, what do you think your options are? And they may list off some, and mine may be over here. And then I'll direct my questions. I'm directing my questions to offer these 3 nuggets of advice that I have, that if they haven't brought it up. I'm like, okay, so what do you think other possibilities might be? And you pick out words from what they've shared that, you're leaving breadcrumbs to offer them the suggestions over here. But you're walking them into the answer. You're not giving them the answer, because ultimately this is what we're doing. When somebody comes to us for advice, we're saying, I believe in you. I trust you. And so instead of telling you what to do, I'm going to ask you questions so you can find the answer, because I love you, I believe in you, and I want to empower you. I'm not here to get power over you. I'm here to share with you and create connection with you and intimacy with you. That's the best way to give a person advice, okay? And so that's why we turn everything into a question. So what are your options? I hear you're frustrated with this. What would you like to see different? Give me some ideas of what about this isn't working for you? What do you think you could do to make it different? See, again, I'm putting the responsibility back on them. What part of this situation do you think you can control? Do you see how that gets them thinking? And remember, ultimately, when someone's asking us for advice, not always, but most often, they're wanting to stay irresponsible, and they're wanting us to buy in to this. Well, by asking questions, I'm lovingly moving them out of that stuck victim position, and many times they don't want to be here. It's a lack of emotional mastery. It's stuck in childhood. Just as a child, we couldn't make decisions. Our parents made them for us, and so we don't recognize that when we're over here asking for advice, we most often feel like the child, and we're trying to make someone the parent we never had. Now we don't recognize that, and so that's why I'm trying to show them I'm not your parent. I'm your friend, I'm your boyfriend, or whatever it may be in your life. I trust you, I believe in you. And so you're also helping them start addressing the problem from an adult perspective by turning everything into a question. Another one is, what sort of plan do you think you could put in place to act on these aspects that you think you're in control of? Again, now you're walking them into their own solution. You're empowering them. You're not taking the mantle of I know better than you, all right? Another question could be, so if all of this is going on, what do you think your part in this is? This is, because when we'd say, well, you're doing A, B, C, if you'd stop doing this, it'd be better. Well, a great counter to that, because we're going to create that negativity, that anger, the blame, everything if we come at them like that. Well, here's a converse to that. What do you think your part in this is? Do you see, that gets them thinking, but we're not saying you're the problem. You need to be different. We're posing a possibility. Well, I don't think it's not about me. I'm not doing anything wrong. Okay, that's great. How does that belief work for you? Is there another possible way to look at that might open you up to solutions you'd never thought of? Do you see limitations in having that, idea in this situation? Or is that the best way to look at it? Do you see, I'm not telling them that, they're being pig-headed, and that's what you're being, we just start immediately telling them what they're doing wrong. Do you see how I take that so-called wrong stance and I turn it into a question that's explorative? They get to look within themselves and see their perfect imperfections and how they're viewing this current situation. Okay, so other forms of that are, what do you think you're getting from this situation? What are the benefits? How much freedom does this belief that you have provide you? How does it allow you to not have to take responsibility? All of these questions allow them to investigate the answer for themselves. And so those are your 3 tips to help you. Just to recap, it's determine if you're going to give advice. Never tell them what to do and then turn everything into a question. Now, if you'd like to go deeper into this, I would suggest signing up for my Emotional Mastery Method, the complete Emotional Mastery Method. It's only $47 a month. It's a monthly subscription. You can cancel anytime. And if the codependence portion of the masterclasses that walk you through all of this, that'll give you the emotional mastery so that you can create interdependence, not codependence, and show you, give you, I do a lot of live examples of, how to combat this type of stuff within the master classes. It's a great resource for you. And this works professionally. It also works in your relationships with your kids and your partner. So there you go. There are your 3 tips. If you'd like to learn more and get better at it, you can subscribe to my complete emotional mastery method. I'll leave you the link for you to do that. So I hope that helps you. And as always, enjoy the journey.